Welcome to days 1 through 7 with my 2021 Washington Mustang Madness challenge horse. I got my first pick, Gelding, who is a 4 to 5 year old Palomino gelding from the Paisley Desert HMA. I call him Ringo. I was given a list of horses that I could choose from based off the photos. I was able to pick a top 4 and was assigned a horse at random from the top 4 in the end. He was my top pick, and I'm thrilled that I got him. He's both flashy and really calm looking in his photos, and as a horse that's going to be up for auction, that's exactly what I wanted. He hauled home really well. It was a 2-hour drive, wasn't that far, but he was nice and quiet in the trailer. He didn't move around too much. He was nice and calm at our pit stops, and overall I was really pleased with how he hauled. Here we'd stopped at Coastal to grab a few things for home. Here we are at home getting ready to unload him. We were getting the round pen opened up and the horses put away so I could back in without an issue. Here he is unloading. He's the first Mustang that I've had just walk off the trailer this calmly, and it was really fun to see. My stepdad was betting he would run off the trailer, and he proved him wrong. Here he is hopping out. He's nice and curious. He's not too worried. He's taking in his surroundings in stride. There was 3 of us in the round pen right now, and he's really not too concerned. Here he was just hanging out and getting settled in the first night while we were putting the round pen panels back together, bringing him food, getting his water set up. He was just really calm. He was able to go pee, and he started eating his food, and just overall wasn't too worried about where he was. A couple photos of the cute guy. There's my gelding tattoo saying hi. So here we are on day 1. He's a little bit worried about me coming into the round pen. He's staying on the far side. He doesn't want to come up to my side yet, and that's totally fine. That's to be expected. He's not crashing through the walls though, and that's fantastic. Here I just want him to keep his eyes on me, and when he does, I back away. When he looks away, I walk back forward. I had to experiment with a couple different methods on how I wanted to approach this gelding because it was hard to keep his attention, but he wasn't too flighty. So here he was watching me, so I just stayed where I was. I was rewarding him by not coming any closer. Here I lost his focus, so I came forward. He looked at me, and then he very quickly blew me off, so I ended up coming right back towards him. Here I had reached out for him, and he got nervous, and that's okay. It's to be expected. And I did start actually lunging him around a bit, which I don't do that often with my Mustangs. But I thought maybe moving his feet would help me be able to bring his attention back onto me when I asked him to hold still. It didn't end up working as well as I thought, and I did ultimately end up going back to the approach and retreat method, but it was nice to see him move out and see his gaits, get an idea of how he moved and if there was any lameness, and I really like his cute little floaty trot, so I was having fun watching him go around. Right there I backed up to try and see if I could get him to come in towards me, and he didn't, so I did go right back to it. Right there, he was stopped and he looked at me. Here he's looking at me, and as soon as he looks at me, I back off, and that's his reward. I want him to know that that's the right thing. I'm reaching towards him. He doesn't really want to look. He's kind of distracted. He's kind of blowing me off, and so I did step in front of his line of sight, so I want to bring his attention back. Here I am doing that again. I really want him to notice me, so I'm going in front of him. And then after a while, he really just still wasn't paying attention, so I did move him and ask him to go back forward. There's that cute little floaty trot again. He'd be a cute little dressage horse. So here he looked at me, I reached towards him, and I backed off. There's his reward. And I'm going to keep doing that. His halter has slid down, and my goal for the day was really to get that halter moved back up onto his nose. There he ignored me, so I was moving him forward again. Right there he looked at me, and I backed off. This time he does kind of toss his head at me, which I should not have rewarded, but I did because I was happy. Oh, guess it wasn't that time. Here it is. He tosses his head towards me, and sometimes that can be a sign of disrespect, and I shouldn't have rewarded it, but I was just happy he was giving me his attention. There I reached my hand towards him for the first time. At this point, I'm tossing my string over his back, the string of my whip, because I want him to feel it and realize it's not scary, it's not going to eat him, it's not terrifying, and touching him is totally fine. So while he's trotting around, I'm not asking him to move out, I'm just letting him move. I'm tossing my string onto his back and letting him realize on his own it's not scary. Here he holds still, and so I wiggle it a little bit, so I know he knows it's there, he can feel it, and he doesn't react too much, so I pull my whip down and I give him a break. Here we're back moving forward, and I just keep working with that string. Now he's at a first touch with the string and he's relaxed. I did actually lose the rest of the footage, but I was able to get a hold of his lead rope and we started working on our approach and retreat again, and I was able to get up and pet his neck and remove his tag on the first day. Here I was petting on his neck. And I did adjust his halter shortly after this and was able to get it moved up off of his nose, which was fantastic. Here we were just hanging out. I was bringing his food out on the second part of the first day. He's just cute and I want to love on him. Here we are on day 2. I have brought out his breakfast, and my goal for today was just to brush his mane and brush him and get to know him and get him used to me touching all over his body. So I walk out, and this is only the second day. He's still really unsure about me approaching him. He's definitely better from his right side. As you can see, he turned towards me. He's a little bit more relaxed now that I'm on this side again. I just lean towards him, and when he looks towards me, I release right there. He's much more focused on me today, which is great. It's still not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was the day before. Right there, he's a little distracted, but he brings his attention back to me, and I back off because I really want to encourage this behavior. I really want him to be able to focus on me and give me his attention when I need it. So I do this for quite a while, and I just sit here and I approach and I retreat, and I actually did crop a lot of this out of the video because it was so long, but you can definitely tell what I'm doing and how I time it. I love to see him licking and chewing. He's processing what's going on. He got stressed, but now he's releasing that stress through his mouth. He's looking at me, and there's the backing off again. I'm much more pleased with how engaged he is today. I'm going to start making my release a little bit smaller each time because at this point I want to start being able to get closer and closer and eventually touch him. And if I keep walking all the way away, I won't be able to get there. And so I make my release just a little bit smaller now. I might just shift my weight back. I might just put my arm down. And he still realizes that that is the release and he is okay. And I'm not constantly putting pressure on him until he gets to the point that he's going to explode or move away or feel so uncomfortable he needs to move. And this will actually be my first time seeing any brushes or being brushed. He hasn't been brushed yet. This is the first part of day 2. Where we left off with the tag removal is where we left off yesterday. Right there, I got a little scratch on his cheek and I rewarded him. And I came back up, now I'm brushing his shoulder, and I introduced the wire curry for the first time because he's covered in loose winter hair and I wanted nothing more than to brush it off and start getting him cleaned up. I'm brushing kind of softly because this is the first time he's allowed me to pet further back than his shoulder, and I wanted to kind of explore and figure out which areas he's comfortable with, which areas I need to work on. Right there, he'd started to move away, so before he did, I moved myself back and gave him a chance to relax and understand that I'm not going to put pressure on him until he explodes. I want to reward him for standing there quietly. Here I am brushing him some more with that curry comb, just going right back through all those areas I'd already brushed, figuring out where I'm going to have to work on desensitizing and where is already pretty calm. So you can see through his belly area, he gets a little bit tense. Here I'm using the bristle brush. I'm brushing a little bit more vigorously. He's still pretty relaxed. Doesn't seem to mind. He's watching the horses outside the round pen. And he's starting to get pretty comfortable with me just walking around on this side of him. So here I'm getting ready to brush and braid his mane for the first time. And I want to use my Santa Fe spray because I don't want to pull out hair. I want to be able to condition it. And he has never seen a spray bottle, let alone been sprayed by one. So I'm doing my approach and retreat. I've got scary things in my hands. I'm still scary to him. So I'm giving lots of reward when he stands there and looks at me. I want to make it nice and pleasant, not too scary. And I start squirting my bottle from a distance so he can hear it, he can see it, he can smell it, all of those things before they're right up on top of him. I don't want to catch him off guard with the bottle. I want him to know it's coming and be prepared and set him up for success. So here I'm getting a little bit closer. I'm going to start spraying it towards him again. And as you can see right here, he's relaxed enough that I'm able to spray his mane and he doesn't mind. And we're getting ready to brush it. Here we are, spraying his mane some more. You can't really see it. It's right behind me. You can see the mist coming off in the wind. this point, I'm brushing out his mane. I'm trying to be very careful because it is tangled. I want to pull his hair out. I brought him some hay so he could have something to do while I brush him, so we could both just relax together and get to know each other and enjoy our time together. And let him see that hanging out with me is really a great experience and a great thing to do. Now his mane's all braided, as you can see, and he's adorable. And I just wanted to walk back over one more time before I called it for the day, and I just wanted to rub him all over. This is my first time having 2 hands on him. And as you can see in just a second, he does jump forward. I love to rub my horse's tummies. My gelding loves it, and so I kind of do it without thought to all my horses, and it did catch him off guard. But as you can see, I come right back, and I put those 2 hands right back on him, and I go right back to that scary spot, and I help him realize it's not so bad, and I reward him when he doesn't move. There he is sunbathing. Here we are on day 2 or 3. This is day 3 now. We are getting ready I'm mucking his pen. I just wanted to see how he'd react to me being in there without focusing on him. He totally didn't mind. He just ate his hay. He would pay attention to me, and when I got behind him, he might adjust his stance so he could keep an eye on me, but overall, he was not too worried. Here we are on that same day. I've now finished mucking his pen. It's a little bit warmer out, and I'm starting to work on him for the first time this day. So I want to approach him, and I want to brush him. I try and start out most days by brushing or loving on him and just letting me feel all over his body so he gets really used to being touched and handled. So here I am just giving him some loves, petting on him. He's shedding like crazy. You should have seen my sweater after this. I was covered in his hair. So now we're working on leading. This is actually the 2nd or 3rd time we've worked on leading, but this is the first time it really started to click. Leading is something he really struggled with. He just wasn't understanding the concept of pressure and release. He wanted to just lay into that pressure and just walk circles around the ramp and just drag me behind him like a skier. And so right here was the first time he was really getting it. And so I'd just ask pull, and when he'd give me a baby step, I'd give him a big old release. I'd put all the slack back in that line. I'd tell him he was a good boy. I'd give him a break. Everything I could do to let him know that that was the correct answer. So right here you can see he's parked out and his back feet haven't taken a step. There he did it, but he got a little overwhelmed. He's moving more than I thought he would. He gets distracted by his hay, and so I just keep putting light pressure on. I want him to bring his head back towards me, put his focus back on me, and I want him to take that step. There he is looking at me again. He takes a step, and then he takes a step too far, actually. Nope, I got ahead of myself. He stepped towards me well that time. And I'm just going to keep asking him to walk to the side now because I'm backed up to the side of the round pen. So we need to turn so I have more space. As you can see, his back feet are still getting stuck, just like they did a minute ago. He's parked out, and I want him to take a step with his back feet and release and come towards me. He does take a step away from me there, and he gets overwhelmed, and he tries to fight me and go the other direction, so I just hold my pressure. And once he's relaxed and he's thinking again, I do ask him to come back towards me. Right here, we're kind of struggling. He's trying to figure out what I mean. He wants to go a different direction, and when I bring him back towards me, he wants to go past me and turn all the way or the rest of the way around. He's distracted, but we figure it out. We took a break from leading, and I wanted to see if he'd let me stand on his offside. He has not let me touch his offside yet. So here we are. You can see he's kind of nervous. His ears are watching me, and he's a little tense. And so I'm just rewarding him by letting me put his hand out towards his shoulder. And I just very carefully ask him to let me pet his shoulder. And he realizes it's not so scary, and pretty quickly he realizes it's pretty nice to let me pet his offside as well as his right side. And there's my big release because he did exactly what I wanted. I'm going to ask him to take a step towards me, make sure he's not like locked up in his feet and scared. I like to release my horse's feet pretty often. So right here, now that I've unlocked his feet, he is not nervous, and he's trying to move away from my hand. And he does get away from me right here. I back my rope up enough that I can hold on while not being stuck right behind his butt. And I hold on until he holds still, and then I flip that rope back over his head. He did not love the rope flipping over his head, but that's kind of to be expected. He's a little bit shy around his ears. I hold on, and I ask him to come back around towards me. He does do that pretty well. I get back out in front of him where he can see me, so I'm his focus again. He gets a little distracted, he wants to walk away. And so I keep pulling, and he does go out of frame, but we do make it work, and we do end up on his offside, and I pet him all over. Here I was introducing the flag for the first time. This is still day 3. He's now been working on his leading. He's now been touched on both sides, but now he's going to be introduced to the flag for the first time. He's not quite sure what to think about it. It's pretty windy. It does make a funny sound. And he wants to hang out on the arena wall, which is kind of his safe area. He likes that arena wall. It's kind of like a comfort blanket. And so I do continue to ask him to kind of move off of it, and you'll see that throughout this clip. So right here, I was trying to get him to sniff it, and he really doesn't want to sniff it. He'd rather just pretend it's not there. And so I kind of start moving it around in front of him where he has to look at it, and I reward him when he doesn't react. Here I am reaching out, and I pet him on the shoulder with it for the first time. Generally speaking, once I pet him on his shoulder with something that he thinks is scary, he'll become a lot more engaged with it. So here I am rubbing it on his shoulder and letting him know that it's not going to hurt him, it's not so scary. Here he had moved back towards the arena wall, and I want to pull him off that wall and bring him back out towards the open. So like I said, that arena wall is kind of his safety blanket, and I don't want him to only be okay with something while he's pushed up against the wall. So I bring him back out, and I ask him to do all those same things while now he's out in the open. Just gonna rub him with it. He didn't love it going up by his ears, so of course I just go right back up to that area, and I reward him when he doesn't react. He'd been kind of looking away, so I did ask him to bring his head back around. I really want him to look at that flag, and here we got a little sniff. He kind of thought about playing with it with his lips, and I kind of rubbed his nose with it. And I went right back to his body, and I rubbed it all over him. I wanted him to be comfortable with it, touching him all over. Now I'm just going to flag it around in an area a little bit further away. It's still making a lot of noise, and he doesn't love it. But I'm at a distance that he won't move away. He just kind of looks away, and I'm going to keep building on that. So he had walked away, and I moved him back around off the round pin, and that's why we're now over here. We're doing the same thing, though. We're waving the flag at a distance where he feels comfortable with it. As you see, he's a bit nervous. He's trying to suck himself back over to that arena wall where he can feel safe. So I do try and encourage him to stay off the wall. I'll bring him back out. I take breaks and I pull him back away from the wall. And he's getting there. He's just would rather be by his wall. Here I am waving around a little bit closer. Big break every time he doesn't move. And I do it again. And then I release when he doesn't move. And he slowly can build on it. And I'll start getting closer. Right here I'm a bit closer. Now I'm waving it up as well as down. It's scary, but he's holding still and he's fighting through it. He's realizing it's not so bad. As you can see, he's kind of blocking me from his scary side at this point with his head. And so I did kind of ask him to bring his head back out in front of him and acknowledge that it's there. And there it is on that good side. It's right by his ears, or it's kind of near his ears, and it's kind of scary to him, but he's doing a good job. He's holding still. He's toughing through it. He's learning it's not so bad. I give him little breaks right there to process what he's going through. I'm going to walk around him with it. I'm going to wave it all over. And the goal is to be able to walk around both sides of him without holding the rope and be able to wave the flag all over without a reaction. So I'm just working on getting him used to it all over. A lot of horses will get scared when you go behind them with something like a flag and you shake it behind their butt where they can't see very well. But he is doing really well, so I gave him a big reward right there, and I rubbed him with it, and I stopped shaking it, and that's his reward. I was petting his neck with it. I pet down his leg with it for the first time, I think, in this clip. And I was really impressed because I haven't touched his legs at all at this point, and he didn't really mind one bit. So here I'd moved him back off the arena wall again because I'm onto that scary side. This is the side that until today he hadn't let me touch, let alone stand around over here. And so I am waving this now very scary flag on this side that he's much more shy about. And he is trying to block me with his head, so I just carefully ask him to move his head over and let me onto his side. And when he does, I'll give him a break. I just slowly work my way around, and you can see he's getting more and more comfortable with it. At this point, I'm getting ready to touch him with it for the first time, because like I said, once something's touched him and he's had it rubbed all over him, he tends to realize that it's not so scary, and he'll be much more open and engaged with it. And so I try and touch him with these scary things pretty early on in the process, so he can start really engaging and learning. He's pretty relaxed right here, letting it rub all over him. He's definitely paying attention. He's watching with his ears or listening with his ears, but he's not too worried. He's not moving away. He's not overly tense. So then I put away my flag and I got out my whip. I like to use the carrot stick for a lot of my training because I like that I can toss the string around. It can make a lot of noise, but it's not as big and floppy as the lunge whip. So right now I'm just smacking it on the ground, and it's actually making a lot of noise, but the video didn't pick that up very well. But I am rewarding him when he's holding still and he's just letting it hit the ground next to him. He's not reacting. I just keep walking around just like the whip. I want to be able to walk around both sides of him, complete circle, swinging it around without a reaction. Here I wanted to see if he'd sniff it. He doesn't love to sniff things. He doesn't really care to sniff things. So I couldn't ask for too long. Here I am on a scary side. As you can see, he's jumping a bit more. The scary side is still the side that things are a little bit more scary on, but that just means I'm going to have to do more work on that side. As you can see, I'll pause and I'll stop hitting it. That's when I'm giving him a break because he's doing something right or he's starting to get a little overwhelmed, and I want to stop before he gets pushed over that boundary and stops learning. Here I am rubbing it on him. I want him to know it's nice, it's great, it scratches the itchy spots, it's not scary, it won't hurt you. So I'm just rubbing it all over, getting him nice and acquainted to it, seeing what spots I might need to work on. And then I'm going to start tossing this stick and string over his back. Sometimes when these horses feel this string kind of dragging up their opposite side, it will spook them. But he did a really nice job. He wasn't really too worried about it. And this kind of gets him used to things flying up and over his back, up and over his head, behind him. I just love doing this. This is something I'll do with every horse before I get on them. He really isn't too worried. He's just kind of relaxing. He doesn't love it when it's up by his ears, but that's okay. That's something we're working on. But overall, he's pretty relaxed. Looks like he's about ready to take a nap. Here we are tossing the string right behind his hips. A lot of horses get pretty nervous when you throw things behind their hips, or a lot of green horses. So I wanted to be nice and sure that he wouldn't mind this string being around the back legs, around his butt. He wouldn't jump forward, and he didn't, so that was great. So here I am swinging it around again. That whip, you can see on the ground, it's hitting right behind his feet, and he's not too worried, and that's fantastic. We're getting very close to being able to walk all the way around with that whip without a reaction. So here I am moving back towards that scary side. As you can see, he's really leaning away. He doesn't want me to be over there, and so I'm holding that rope. I'm trying to let him know the correct thing is to stand still towards me and let it happen, and then that's when he's going to get that release. So he's nervous. I'm going to put a little pressure on, try and get him to stop walking away and come towards me, and as soon as he will, I'll stop doing this. So we did end up walking around, taking a little break, and now we're over on the other side of the round pen, but he's much more relaxed now that he's had a chance to walk around and kind of process what's happening. Here I am touching him with it for the first time on this off side. I'm going to rub him all over, and I'm going to repeat exactly what I did on the other side on this side. When I work my horses, I want to be sure that I do whatever I do on one side on the other side. Horses don't always retain things when you go from one side to the next, so it's important to make sure that you can do something on both sides comfortably before you move on. So here I am tossing that stick and string all over his back again, on this side now. Just like the other side, he's really not too worried. He doesn't love it when the stick comes up behind his ears, but that's okay. It's perfectly fine. We're still working on that. But he's not jumping forward. He's not too worried. He's not flinching. He's not overly tense, and that's great. So here I brought out the saddle pad. This is a brand new saddle pad. I hadn't washed it, hadn't been on a horse, so it smells pretty funny, and he was all about it. He could have sniffed it all day, so this clip is edited down quite a bit because, like I said, he was sniffing it for quite a while. He just wanted to play with it. And so I brought the saddle pad out, and I just wanted to swing it all over his back just like I did with that stick and string. Only this is a saddle pad, so obviously it's much larger. It's going to make a good sound when it falls onto his back. It's heavier. And he's not too concerned about it. So that's where the stick and string came into play. I was desensitizing him to things flying up over his back and landing on him like this. And now that it's on his back and it's on both sides, you can see it out of both eyes, I'm going to step back, give myself plenty of room to be out of the way if he does react, and ask him to take a step forward. Lots of horses will kind of get antsy when there's something on their back for the first time like this. But Ringo really impressed me. He really didn't mind. He just took a couple steps and was pretty relaxed. Here he was trying to figure out what I was wanting because he's still very new to leading at this point and he didn't quite get it. But as you can see, he's still really relaxed. He really doesn't mind it's on his back. So at this point, I got the biggest reaction of the day. I pushed it off over his butt and he thought that was kind of scary. And he did kind of run forward. And so I just went right back to it. I got him to hold still. It took a second. He did want to just keep walking. Once I got him to hold still, I went right back to it. So here I was. I wasn't asking too hard for him to stop. I wanted him to kind of realize on his own that wasn't a big deal and he could hold still and we could go right back to work. I brought it back over. I let him sniff it one more time. Make sure he knew it still wasn't scary. And then instead of just tossing it over his back again this time, because as you can see here in a second, he was kind of worried about it now, I broke it down into a baby step. And I started tossing it towards his, bumping it into his sides, kind of tossing it at him. Which you'll see me do right in here. So I'm just going to bump it against him. I'm going to swing it at him. Sometimes it will touch him, sometimes it won't. And he's going to realize it's really not a big deal. It's not going to hurt him. I can touch him, and it's not scary. I kind of pulled him away from that wall right there. That's still his safety zone. And I just keep bumping it on him. Not a big deal. And then here in just a minute, I will toss it back up over his back again. And there's his reward. He was holding still, so I stopped. Tossing it, just bumping it into his belly, right into his girth area, his flanks, making sure he's nice and comfortable with it before I put it back over his back. And there he was, nice and relaxed, so I gave him a nice reward and I backed off. Just gonna keep working on doing that same stuff, make sure he's nice and relaxed and he doesn't mind. So now it's on his butt, and I had a horse before who anytime something was on his back, he would be fine. But the moment it was on top of his hips, he would lose it. So I've started desensitizing horses to things on their bums and letting them walk forward with that. So right there, Ringo really didn't mind. Here I am just still tossing all over his back, making sure he's nice and comfortable with it. Sometimes he still does flinch a little bit to it, but that's okay. Just gonna keep repeating this until he doesn't really care at all anymore. And here I'm gonna go to the other side, and I'm just gonna do the same stuff on the other side, just like every other exercise. I do everything on both sides. Just kind of tossing it around. This is still his offside. It's still kind of scary. I wanted him to see it and know it wasn't scary. I'm gonna let him sniff it on this side. Just repeat the whole process. There's a lot of repetition in horse training. So here I am on the offside. I'm going to toss it onto his side. I'm going to let him feel it, rub it all over him. And he figures out pretty quickly it's not a big deal. And there it is, up onto his back without an issue. Perfect. Just pet him, let him know it's a good boy. I'm going to toss it up again, and then I'm going to do the same thing where I back off and I give himself a chance to walk forward and have a reaction, and when he doesn't, that's fantastic. Here I am giving him that moment. If he wants to react, this is his chance, and he doesn't, and that's fantastic. Giving myself plenty of room to be out of the way in case he does. He really doesn't care. He doesn't seem too amused. He doesn't get why it's a big deal. So this next bit is something I learned from a friend. She had a gelding that I used to have, and she would put saddle pads on their back and then just push them off and let them fall onto the ground and make all sorts of noise. And I'd never thought about doing that because I want to keep my saddle pads clean. And I've realized it's so much fun and it's such a great tool. Right here, Ringo got a bit worried about it falling onto his scary side. And as you can see, he didn't react too big, but he wanted to back up and he wanted to see it. And after a second of sniffing and snorting at it like a silly guy, I asked him to take a step forward, and he did play with it with his mouth, and then he was pretty much over it. So right here, I had him take a step forward, and he played with it, and he realized it was not so scary. It really wasn't a big deal. It's just that saddle pad, and now it's on the ground. It's nothing too special. So now that he has had a reaction to it, I'm going to keep doing this until I don't get a reaction. So I went right back to it, tossed it onto his back, and then I did pat it around, make sure he didn't mind me patting on it, patting on his offside. Some horses really don't like the sound that being pat makes. And I just shoved it right back off, and this time he did look at it, and he noticed it was there, but he didn't react nearly as big as he did the first time, and that's great. And then we did end up walking around, taking a little break, so that's why we're on the other side of the round pen. But then I set it up on his butt, and I shoved it off his butt, and I wanted to see what he would react to there. It did touch his foot, and he pulled his foot away, but other than that, he really didn't care. There, he was more interested in me. Here we are on day 4. This was the first time I'd walked in to try and catch him without a drag line on. So I took my time, I introduced myself, I let him sniff me and get refamiliarized himself with me for the day. And this is the first time I'd walked up to him with a lead rope and started to uncoil it next to his head, and he did get a little spooked and he walked away. But as you can see, I just walked right back into his sight line and asked him to stop, and he did, and that was great. And I released right there because that's exactly what I want. He does keep walking away and kind of blowing me off this morning when I go to put the lead rope on, and I do touch his halter, and it startles him, and he pulls his head away, but that's okay. He does walk out of frame, and I continue to work on catching him, and after a couple minutes, he is caught without an issue. So here I am petting him, taking it nice and slow, introducing myself, and here is where he gets spooked when I grab his halter. That's totally okay. He hasn't had me pull on his halter much with my hand before. So I just follow him, I walk into his sight line, have him stop. When he stops, I reward him. Here he's walking away, so I stopped him again. And in just a second here, I catch him without an issue, now that he realizes he shouldn't just walk off, and that me touching his halter is no big deal. So here I am catching him. I really should have edited this out because half of us is out of the frame, but oh well, it's too late at this point. So here we are. I was just catching him. I was petting him. I was touching his halter. I was getting him used to my hands all over his face. And now he's caught, and it's no big deal. He's still pretty new to leading, but he's definitely getting the hang of it. As you can see, he's a bit softer. I get more steps each time. I still have to pull on him a bit, but he's getting there. He gets a little bit stuck in this area. That's over, again, that corner is kind of where his food and his water and the gate is. So he likes to hang out there. He gets a little stuck. Here I brought out the mounting block, which he thinks is kind of scary. It makes a lot of noise. It's kind of like a drum. But I went to brush him today. I just start out most days by brushing him, getting familiar with him, letting me pet him, seeing what spots are kind of reactive spots in that particular day. Here is showing him the brush because for whatever reason he was a little antsy this morning. But once I started brushing him, he calmed right down. Here I am just brushing all over this clip. I probably should have just edited it down. It's really not that interesting. I really am just brushing him, seeing how sensitive he is for the day, seeing if there's any spots I'm going to need to work on. And like I said, it's kind of a boring clip, but oh well. Here I am picking all the fur out of the brush. He's got a ton of hair shedding. He's distracted by the neighbors, have the tractor outside. He's kind of watching that. This clip's almost over, but in just a second I walked him over to the round pen wall to get my curry comb. I brushed him with the curry comb as well because he had so much hair coming off. That's what I'm doing right here. In this clip I did remember to edit down. It was just me brushing him all over on both sides for quite a while. It was long and boring, so here's just a snippet of me brushing on him. So on this day I brought out my stick and string for the first time since I desensitized him to it, and I wanted him to work on yielding his hip for the first time. So by doing this, I'm going to walk right up to his hip, and as soon as I bend at my hip towards his hip, and I lift my hand and tap with my stick, that's when I want him to cross those back legs and pivot on the front feet. And he's never done this before, so he is not quite sure what I'm asking, but he is figuring it out really well. He's moving more forward than I would like. He's not quite pivoting, but right there was a really close one. He did take one step back at the end, but that's okay. He's learning this incredibly quickly for the time we've been working on it. As you can see, I like to pet him with my stick when I walk back towards his hip before I ask him to move, because I don't want him to start associating with me by his hip with disengaging his hip. I want him to hold still until I make it obvious that I am asking him to move that hip. Here we are on the other side, and he does back up this time and tap the mounting block, and he totally startles himself, but that's okay. It's good for him to scare himself every once in a while and realize it's not a big deal. Right there, you can see he jumped, and he realized pretty quickly it wasn't a big deal. So we just went right back to work after I moved the mounting block out of the way again. He does think it's kind of scary when I drag it across the ground like that. It makes quite the sound. But we just go right back to what we're doing. I pet him, I let him know he's okay, and then as soon as I lift that hand and I lean over at the hip, I want him to move his hips. Right there, he backed up a little bit more than he should have, and he kind of just backed into my area. So that was not the best one, but that's okay. We're learning. And so now I'm actually asking him to move forward instead of disengage his hip. My hand, the difference in this cue is my hand's forward, and it's pointing the direction I want him to go. I'm standing upright, and my whip's more behind him. And as soon as he gives me any forward motion, I stop asking with the cue, I release the pressure, and I just let him kind of walk where he wants to go, and I'm just kind of following him. So right here, you can see I'm getting ready to cue him. As soon as that hand goes forward, that's when I'm wanting him to move. And the moment he starts giving me forward movement, I stop moving that whip, and I just follow him. Here he got a little stuck over by his food and water, so I just sent him forward again. He's a little bit stuck right here. Here's where my other horses are hanging out. And then I do the same movement I do to disengage his hip to ask him to stop. He's really picking up on this well. It's definitely not perfect, but I definitely don't expect it to be perfect at 3 or 4 days out of the wild, so I'm really pleased with how he's doing. And I just keep rewarding him. I try and keep the energy pretty low-key. I don't want to have to be big and scary to make him move. I want him to be nice and receptive to small, easy, quiet cues. And he's really getting the hang of stopping here, and I'm really pleased with it. And he's licking and he's chewing and he's focused, and it's really nice. So this is his scary side, and as you can see, he'd rather back up and put me back out in front of him. But I'm just going to follow him and keep putting that pressure on until his feet move forward, and then I release. And he did kind of drag me off this direction, so I did stop him and ask him to be soft in the halter, and before I asked him to do it again. Here we are asking for him to do it again, and he does kind of drag me off again. Nope, this time he's soft. I'm kidding. And then I asked him to stop, and he did a nice stop. Now we're back on his right side. Doesn't mind this side nearly as much, and we're just practicing, making sure he still remembers. I switch back and forth from side to side quite a bit. This was his worst stop of the day. He was just kind of distracted, wasn't really paying attention, so I kind of popped him with the halter right there and got him to come around and pay attention after all. Here I brought out the tarp. It was kind of a windy day. The tarp was loud, and I just decided it was the perfect day to let him see the tarp. I don't do a lot of tarp work with my horses, but I recently decided I felt the need to play with the tarp. So I pulled it out, and I was going to put it right up against the round pen wall, and I wanted him to walk over it. We didn't end up accomplishing that in this video, but that's okay. We walked right past it, we got our front feet on it, we sent around it twice, 3 times, and he got used to me rubbing it all over him, and that was enough for me to be happy. As you can see, he's pretty worried about it off the bat. And so I just keep asking for baby steps forward, asking him to be brave, asking him to engage with it. And he's getting there. He got a little overwhelmed right there and went to make an escape, but I brought him back around. And here he'd gotten closer to it. He starts putting his feet on it. He starts sniffing it. He starts playing with it. He ended up thinking the tarp was pretty fun to play with. And he liked to rub his lips on it and make it make sound. Here he is kind of playing with it. It's making a funny sound in the video, but can't hear it over the wind, but he really liked that. He's starting to tap it with his front feet. He's thinking about it. He just doesn't want to take those back feet over it today, and that's totally okay. We're just working on it. So I just keep asking him to step forward or lean forward and engage with that tarp. Just any little baby effort towards it, I released and gave him a reward. And there we got both front feet on the tarp, and he's playing with it, and those back feet came towards it, so we got a nice release. And right there, I thought he was going to walk over it, but we didn't quite get it. That's okay. So I did end up asking him to send over it. And he did walk kind of in a dirt gap next to it, and that's okay, but he was nice and calm. There, he got overwhelmed with it being on his scary side, and that's totally fine. I just had him go back around, and we did it again. And when he was much more calm the next time, I let him be done for that, for now. So here we are going back around. I just want him to go by it one more time, see if he'd relax more, or how much more we would have to work on this, because I want to end on a positive note. He wasn't quite sure what I was asking here. This is the first time I'd asked him to send forward without my whip. See, he was much calmer that time passing by it. He did move forward a little quicker, but he was much more relaxed. I had him stop, and then we did switch gears, and I started working on having him touch the tarp. Just kidding. We walked past it one more time. So now was when we switched gears. I picked up the tarp, and I wanted him to get used to having it rubbed all over his body, because I thought maybe if he was used to having it touching him, he would be much more comfortable with the idea of walking over it with all 4 feet here later today. So here I was just showing it to him. It makes a lot of noise, and he was pretty interested in smelling it. Like, he'd played with it with his lips while it was on the ground earlier. He thought it was pretty fun, but he wasn't so sure about it being this close to him. So I just gave him plenty of time to sniff it, and then I took it away, and that was his reward. I got a better grip on it. I'm approaching him with it, and I'm going to try and touch his shoulder with it for the first time. I want him nice and relaxed, and I touched him. He does kind of flinch. He doesn't love it. He tries to move away, and that's okay. I just follow him, and I want him to calm down and hold still and realize that moving away isn't the right answer. So there he holds still, so I tell him he's a good boy. And I go right back to work. I show it to him again. I give him a chance to smell it again. He thinks it's pretty fun to smell. And then here, I'd start waving it all around, because the biggest issue with the tarp is it makes a lot of noise, and it's blowing in the wind. And so I decided to shake it around like I did with the whip, like I did with the flag, from a distance where he felt more comfortable. So by the time it was up next to him, it wouldn't be a big deal. And so I just start shaking it around, and when he holds still or he starts getting a little bit nervous, I'll just hold still, take a little break, let him take a deep breath, let him process what's happening, and then I just keep going. Here I am on his more scary side. As you can see, he's obviously a bit more concerned, but I gave him a break before he walked away, before he got into that flight mode, and now he's more calm, and we just keep working on it. I just take little breaks before he crosses over that threshold where he's no longer learning. I shake it all over, and I give him a big release when he just holds still and enjoys it. And I shake it around, I go back to the other side, make sure he's still comfortable with it, and I actually asked him to take a couple steps towards me. I found that having a horse follow something they're scared of is a great way to help them build confidence. Here he was sniffing it again. He loves to sniff certain things, so I was giving him a break to sniff it. I'm going to start touching him with it. I'm going to start rubbing it on his shoulder. He can see he's a bit nervous. It's making sound. It's bumping into him, but that's okay. When he held still, I released. I'm just going to keep going. You can see he's kind of flinching at it, and that's okay. I'm just going to keep going, and when he's relaxed, I relax. So here in just a second, I go to touch him with it, and he moves away. And so I'm going to stick with him, and I'm going to try and stay right next to him until he holds still, and then I'll stop when he stops. And that's how he's going to figure out that moving away isn't the right answer. So here I am rubbing on him again. He's much more relaxed now, and he realized that walking away isn't going to solve his issue. Here we took a break. He loves to have his cheek scratched, so of course I have to scratch it all the time. He practically falls asleep while you scratch his cheeks. So here we are. I don't remember what day this is anymore. I think this is day 4. Yeah, it's day 4 or day 5. And I'm just loving on him. This is the first time I've gone out. I love to just lay on him and love on him as soon as I go out there every day. So he gets nice and used to me every time. As you can see, he's more comfortable with me walking right up with the lead rope today. He doesn't mind me grabbing his halter. We're getting very close to where he can just be without his halter in the pen. But that's a big step to take, and we just haven't quite done it yet. Gotta rub him with 2 hands, rub all over. He loves his neck scratched. Get his neck scratched for him right there. He does a little bit of the lip wiggle. He's really liking that. I just love loving on him. This is actually the first time I've actually asked him to pick up his foot. I haven't messed with his legs much at all. And so I was pretty happy with how he didn't react too much. I mean, he did walk away a little bit, but overall, that was a really good reaction to me trying to pick up his foot for the very first time. I just loved on him. I could have taken a nap right here. It was so nice out that day. He's much more comfortable with his belly being rubbed, his butt. I grabbed his tail for the first time. I need to brush it. And I was just loving on him, just taking some time to enjoy each other's company. Right there, my bag. I have a bag that hangs on my round pin that holds supplies, and it was flapping in the wind, and he was totally focused on that. He thought it was pretty scary. And we're just loving both sides. He's much, much more comfortable with me on his off side at this point. It's still not perfect, but much better than it was. We're building on it every day. And here we are later that day. I brought the flag back out. I wanted to see what how he retained that information from the other day when I brought the flag out. So we're just refreshing on it. And as you can see, he's pretty chill. He really doesn't mind too much. So it was a pretty quick clip in the video. And so right here in just a second, the bag that I was talking about that hangs on my round pin, the top flap flipped over and it scared him, and it was pretty funny. But he really didn't mind. It just definitely startled him, but he didn't react too big or anything. And then after a second I went over and I closed it back up because it was distracting me as much as it was distracting him. And I brought the flag back out and I just kept messing with him. Just refreshing everything we'd worked on the other day, seeing how much he had retained. And here you'll see I did the exact same thing with my saddle pad. I brought it right back out. I wanted him to see it again. He doesn't have his lead rope on right now because I had just come outside to just check on him, and I felt like working him, and I didn't remember to grab my lead rope. So he's just hanging out. He's loose. We're working at liberty, you could say. And obviously he's not too worried, so that's great. And so I just tossed my saddle pad all over, just like we did on the other day 3. Throw it all over him. He really doesn't mind. You see how much better he is about laying me onto his offside. He did block for a second there, but then he let me over, and it wasn't a big deal. He's getting so much better about that offside, and I'm thrilled with the progress he's making. Just rubbing him all over with that saddle pad, and I'm about to shove it off his back just like I did on the other day. And as you can see, there's really not much reaction. And here I go. Toss it over. He really does not mind. He pays attention to it. He knows it's there. He acknowledges it, but he doesn't really react. Here I walk over, and bending over was something he was pretty unsure about for quite a while. So the fact that I can bend down and get that saddle pad with that little of a reaction was huge for him. I wish I had videos of the first times I'd bend down and like pick something up around him. He would just absolutely lose his mind about it. And so here he did get a little distracted. After I bent down like that, he didn't really want me on his side again. So I just stepped into his line of sight, and I would reward him when he held still. And we just went right back to what we were doing. Here I am back on his good side. I'm going to pull that saddle pad off again. Here it is onto this side. He really doesn't care on this side. He doesn't mind so much me bending over on this side. It's all great. Toss it onto his butt, throw it off his bum. Got stuck right there, and plop. He really does not mind, which is fantastic. Here I let him hang out with my gelding tattoo for the first time, and Tattoo was a jerk. Here we are on just getting loves. I don't remember what day this is, but we're just loving on him. I think this was part of day 4. It's more of those neck scratches. Here we are, day 4 again. I came back out and I brought the scary tarp with me. As you can see, the tarp is not scary anymore. The tarp is now his cape, and he loves it. He loves his super pony cape, or as we like to call him, the super stang. And we just lunged around with it. It wasn't a big deal. I wanted to take a video of this for our Facebook page. I have a lot of potential adopters for him, so I've been taking lots of photos and updates and videos to try and let them know just how cool this guy really is. So you can see he's getting his modeling done, he's getting his photos taken. And here I was pulling off the tarp. And as you can see, he really does not care about this tarp too much, and he's over the dogs. He doesn't mind the dogs. Compared to the other day, this is really great with how desensitized he is to the tarp at this point. I'm really pleased with him. And here we are, this is day 4? I think this is day 4, yep. And I pulled out my saddle for the first time, and you're about to see he's gonna dump my saddle, and I totally wanted him to. It sounds funny, but this is my Colt saddle. I don't mind that he dumped it on the ground, but it's just like the saddle pad. When I throw it off one side, I want them to get used to it falling onto the ground next to them and see how they react. I only did it once this particular day, but as you can see, he walks away, and that's okay. It was before I'd expected him to, but that was the goal. It fell on ground, he reacted a little bit, but then he came right back. This is directly after that. I'm picking the saddle up exactly from where he dumped it, and I'm just putting it right back on, and he really does not care. I'm showing him the saddle, giving him a chance to smell it. He thought my saddle was super interesting. He'd been playing with it while it hung on the rail the day before. I did take forever to tack up, so I apologize for that in advance. I haven't saddled this saddle very many times. It's pretty new to me, and it just took me a while to get the straps all straight and the cinches untwisted. And I don't know, I guess I haven't saddled up a horse in a while. My personal horse is a 2-year-old, so I haven't really done much saddling with him yet. I do apologize that it took me a while to get this saddled up in the video. I do think I edited out part of it just because it really did take me so long. And it wasn't because I was tiptoeing around Ringo. I really just was taking my time and I was distracted. And right here, my cinch was stuck on the back of my saddle and I couldn't get it to come back over. So I'm just yanking on it and trying to untangle it. Ringo just really doesn't mind. I like to start all of my horses with a front and a back cinch. That way, if their future adopter wants to ride them with a back cinch, it's no big deal. They're used to it. And if they don't, then it really doesn't matter either way. I got tired of horses reacting the very first time I'd put back cinches on them, so I just start everything with a back cinch these days. So it's something they're used to right off the bat. Here's the part where I just edited out me putting up one of my cinches just because it took me a while. My fingers were cold. I was fumbling around with the latigo and it just took me a bit. So here's the back cinch getting done up. The front cinch is tight and I'm getting ready to let him move out for the very first time fully cinched up. Both cinches are now snug, and I'm going to back out of his way just like I did when I put the saddle pad on him for the first time, so I have plenty of room to get out of his way if he does react. But, of course, he's fantastic, and he doesn't. So here he is, cinched and saddled up for the very first time. This is a nice, heavy Colt saddle. He's fully cinched up, both cinches. He's got stirrups bouncing on him. He's got slide boots hanging on the back cinch. He really doesn't mind too much. He gets a little startled there. But that was the biggest reaction we got all day with the saddle. And here we are just cruising around, not a care in the world. My saddle string's flipped over the seat and it's driving me crazy now that I notice it. We just lunged a few laps, we kept it short and sweet, and then I just untacked him, and that was all for this day. As you can see, he's just walking around. He's nice and calm. He's not really very worried at all. The saddle is not a big deal, and I'm thrilled. It is not often I get one who doesn't at least do a little crow hop the first time they're saddled. Let alone only being 4 or 5 days out of the wild. And he just kept walking around. He really was just... I'm grinning. He was so great. Here we are back on day 5 or 6 at this point, I think. I brought the tarp back out for fun. It was really windy this day, so the tarp was moving around like a wave, and Ringo thought it was the funniest thing. He kept poking it and playing with it, but that's all. It was just fun, so I included it. Here was, it had just blown across the round pin, and it came at him, and he really didn't mind. It was funny. And then we brought the cape back out, and it kind of turned into a skirt instead of a cape. Here we are on day 5, I believe. I think we're on day 5. because this was the day I put my first ride on him. I walked out and I started teaching him to flex to the halter. That way when I got on, I could make sure I could turn his head and have a stop in an emergency if needed. This is the first time I'd asked him to give to the halter to the side like this and to flex his head around. And this offside was more stiff and it wasn't perfect, and we had to work on it for a little bit, and some of it's edited out because it took quite a while, but overall we just sat here as nice and chill, and we just worked on flexing that head around to both sides to make sure we had nice good emergency brakes before I got on. Here he was a little stuck. He couldn't quite figure out what I wanted, so I just kept holding that steady pressure, waiting for him to bring that head even towards me just a tiny bit, and then I'd give him a big release. That's okay, he's kind of fighting with it. That's okay, he's confused, doesn't quite get what I'm asking for. There, he gave me a little release, so I gave him a little release. Just a little bit. And the more we work on this, the softer he's gonna get, and that's fantastic. Here I was back on the other side, just making sure it's still soft. This side's much softer, as you can see. He comes around a lot further. He's a lot softer in the halter, and that's great. So now I have my reins tied, and I am asking him to back up. I want to make sure if he feels me pull on his halter, he knows that that means to stop or even back up. Because I want to make sure that any kind of brakes, emergency brakes, regular brakes, are there before I am on his back. I'm going to jump around, see how he feels about that. I really figured I'd get more of a reaction out of him, given this is the first time I jumped around next to him. And that's normally one that causes spooking, but he really didn't mind, and I was just so thrilled. He's got the best mind. And I'm going to do it to the same thing to the other side. Like I've said before, just a whole lot of repetition when we're working with these horses. So I'm on the other side, and I'm just jumping around, and he really does not mind. He doesn't get why I'm like this. So now I've got my saddle on, and I'm standing on the scary mounting block for the first time, and I'm up above him, and I'm just going to practice petting him all over. I'm going to get down, I'm going to move the mounting block, I'm going to get back up, and we do this for a couple minutes. I just climb up, get down, move the mounting block, we lead somewhere else, we do it again. Just get him used to me all over the place. This is the first time I laid over his back, and he was not sure what to think, but he definitely wasn't too concerned. I just rubbed him all over with my arms so he knew that I was there. I wanted to touch his girth area, try and get a rise out of him, and I really didn't, and that was fantastic. Right there, I'd say I was reaching around to see if he wanted to sniff me, but he didn't really care that much. Just rubbing on him, making it a nice and pleasant experience. Just making sure he knows I'm there, making sure he knows he's safe, making sure he knows it's comfortable. I slide down, and he was great. We moved the mounting block, we did some more flexing, and now I'm just practicing swinging my leg up over his hind end. A lot of the times when people are getting on, if that back foot hits their hip on a green horse, sometimes that's something that can cause a spook. So I purposely I purposely will swing my foot kind of into their hip and just let them feel it bump onto their hip and make sure it's not a big deal. And here I am getting ready to do what they call the Jeffries method, where you lay across your horse's back and you just rub them all over, and you pet them and you love on them, and you just make it really pleasant. So here I am doing that. Right now I just have one back leg up because I wanted to be able to get down in a hurry if there was an accident, and that's fine. And he did great, so I'm getting ready to get all the way on this time. Just petting on him. It's actually pretty funny. The static from his hair and my sweater, I kept accidentally zapping him, and he did not mind. He's kind of a saint like that. Just loving all over him. Gonna sit on him. I think this is the time I fell off the mounting block, but maybe I'm wrong. He really didn't mind. Here I am getting all the way on. Nope, not quite yet. Just petting on him. I got almost all my weight on him. I do still have a foot on the mounting block. I slid back down, and he was fine. Here I go, getting on for the first time entirely, both legs off the mounting block, both legs on him, doing the Jeffries method. I'm rubbing both my feet on his hips, I'm rubbing my arms down his neck, on his armpits, all over. I'm talking to him. I want him to know I'm here, and I'm all over him, and it's totally fine. And I got back down, we walked to the other side of the round pen, got my mounting block right in the middle, and this is where I got on for the first time, like officially on, like asking him to move out. Here we go, we're on a ride. So here I am, I'm going to center myself here. Scooch over. I haven't got on a horse bareback in so long. I have not rode in forever because my horse just retired a couple years ago and my other horse is too young. But anyways, here we are. I'm just letting him feel me up there, and then I start asking him to walk away, and he did take a step and it kind of caught me off guard, and so I did kind of lose my balance there for a second, but he took care of me and he just walked around to the edge, and then we stopped right here. We just took a minute to pet him and just love on him and just tell him he's doing so great. And after a second, I asked him to walk back out, and we walked a couple laps, and then that was all for first ride. That's all we did. I wanted to keep it short and simple, and it was getting super windy and the dust was in my eyes, so we kept it short for the day. And so we're getting ready to... That's just about the end of the first ride video. As you can see, he's super sweet. He's not too worried at all. Then here's a video of Mom. This is the first time she came out and met Ringo, and she's just loving on him. And he was loving getting scratched. As you can see, he was getting that lip going. He loves his neck scratched. This is his first time meeting someone new, too, so it was really fun to see how he'd interact with someone new. Then Mom actually sent me these photos. She went out to work her horse, he's the Kiger, and Ringo was glued to her, so this was this weekend. He hung out with Mom and he got saddled up again. So that's the end of the day 1 through 7.